and we will decide on our next steps, if any, in the near future. While the Baylor family has faced its share of significant challenges over the past few years, these challenges pale when compared to the impacts on sexual assault survivors and the many lives that have been forever impacted. What happened at Baylor will always be a part of who we are. It will always be a part of our story, and it will always be a part of what influences and informs the decisions we make now and into the future. While I was not at Baylor when these issues arose, I have met with several of the sexual assault survivors during my time as president. I've heard their stories, I've cried with them, I've offered apologies, and I've sought opportunities for healing and reconciliation. These are extremely difficult conversations that no student should ever have to experience. I am confident saying that Baylor is a much different university today than it was 3, 5, and certainly 10 years ago, as we seek to bring light to the world as a preeminent Christian research university. I can assure you that Baylor is deeply committed to compliance in all aspects of our operations, not solely in athletics, but campus-wide. And we've taken many significant steps to ensure a safe, healthy, and supportive and compliant campus community for all of our students, faculty, and staff. We believe that the university's swift and wide-ranging response demonstrates its dedication to functioning with integrity, fostering a culture of compliance, and a commitment to institutional control. Our Vice President and Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Mac Rhodes, has truly been a servant leader since his arrival in Waco 5 years ago. Mac has never wavered from our pursuit of truth and integrity and has completely transformed our athletics department and its culture. He has been an integral part of Baylor University and will be moving forward as an institution, and we are fortunate to have him with us. So I'm going to turn things over now to Mac for some brief comments before we take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Livingstone, for your kind words, but more importantly, for your leadership and your partnership and your commitment to just what makes Baylor such a special place. When I arrived here 5 years ago, I found an institution and an athletics department in turmoil. While it has been challenging, it has also been the most rewarding journey of my career. The women and men in Baylor athletics are some of the most talented, kind-hearted, ethical, and student-centric professionals you'll ever meet. Their care of our student athletes, their commitment to integrity, and their belief in Baylor's mission is unwavering. We have cooperated fully with the NCAA during this long process. In fact, it was Baylor which initially approached the NCAA enforcement staff in 2016 to discuss potential violations. We conducted more than 70 joint interviews and reviewed tens of thousands of pages of documents to determine the facts. While we disagreed with the enforcement staff along the way, we never stopped doing our part in seeking the truth. Ultimately, the findings today are an important reminder for our university, and particularly disheartening and painful for the survivors of interpersonal and sexual violence. Our athletics department and our university are committed to being outstanding members of the Big 12 Conference and the NCAA, and the dramatic changes and reforms implemented over the last 5+ years at Baylor, I believe, have made us a model for other institutions to follow. We are not perfect, that's for sure, and we cannot know what lies ahead, but I've never been more proud to be a member of the Baylor family than I am today, because I know we took the difficult steps to get it right. We only received the committee's findings a short time ago, and our attorneys are continuing their complete review and assessment. We appreciate the thorough and cooperative work of the NCAA enforcement staff and the Committee on Infractions throughout this entire process. They listened to us and acknowledged the many changes we have made within the athletics department and across our campus. With that said, Dr. Livingstone and I are happy to take some questions at this time, but please know and understand we may be limited to what we can share.
All right, we're going to utilize the raise hand function. Please make sure that your name and affiliation are in your label, and I'll call on you individually. First up, John Warner with the Waco Tribune Herald.
Yeah, this is for Mac. Did you think the NCAA's ruling was fair, and how do you think it will affect the future of the Baylor football program?
Thank you, John. I certainly appreciate the question. I think relative to NCAA legislation, the outcome was fair. I think in terms of the future of our football program, when you think about the specific penalties, the recruiting restrictions in particular, obviously that puts you, when you get less days, whether it's unofficial or official visits, that puts you at a disadvantage versus your competitors. But we know, we understand, we think the penalties are fair, and I've got great belief in Coach Aranda and our staff to mitigate them and work through them.
Next question comes from Paul Levine with ESPN.
Hey there. How should people view the NCAA's decision not to punish former coach Art Briles in light of the university's decision to fire him in 2016 and everything that was in the Pepper Hamilton report and the text messages that were even outlined in greater detail in what was released today?
Dr. Livingston, do you want me to take that, or?
No, I can speak to that, and then if you'd like to add anything, Mac. No, Paula, thank you for that question. In our view, as we think about coaching responsibilities, we're really looking to the future, and we're thrilled to have Coach Aranda coaching our football team. We believe he is a person of integrity. He's leading our program with character and integrity, and really don't feel I need to speak to kind of the past and that issue, and look forward to what Coach Aranda is going to do leading our program as we go forward.
Next question comes from Matt Roberts with KWKT TV in Waco.
Yeah, this one's for Mac. Obviously, this has kind of been hanging out there for so long, and now as we position with what's going to happen with the Big 12, where is Baylor? Does this do anything on that front? Does it help? Does it hurt? Anything like that?
Thank you, man. I appreciate the question. I think you said it. It's been hanging around. It's been a black cloud for since I arrived on this campus, and I think we're glad to have some closure and to be able to look forward and move forward. And again, remember our mistakes, learn from our mistakes, learn from our past, and then we'll navigate whatever comes in front of us. So I think it's good for us to have the closure and to be able to move forward.
Next question comes from Curtis Quillen with KCEN TV in Waco.
I guess this would be for both of you guys. There's a very vocal segment of people on social media right now saying that this decision from the NCAA was taking it lightly on Baylor. What would y'all's response to that sentiment be?
So, Curtis, as I reflect on it, and I understand that perspective that's out there, absolutely, given the nature of some of the allegations and what led to this process for Baylor. And I think what you have to look at is the other ways in which Baylor is being held accountable and has been held accountable over time, whether that's through the legal process, the law enforcement, and certainly the criminal process in some cases, the civil litigation process in other cases, whether it was the review by our accrediting body, SAC-COC, the work that the Big 12 did in holding us accountable. So there's multiple other ways in which institutions, including Baylor, are held accountable to sexual assault issues. And so while there certainly may be concern by some, and understandably so, about the NCAA process as it relates to this, given the way in which the NCAA bylaws are written, I do think there are many other ways in which Baylor is and has been held accountable and will continue to be held accountable, along with other institutions that are dealing with similar types of issues.
Curtis, I don't know that there's anything that I can add to it. Again, I go back to, and I think Chair Maturi probably spoke into it, but relative to NCAA legislation, we believe it's a fair outcome.
The next question comes from Austin Walker with KXXB TV in Waco.
Hey there. My question is for President Dr. Linda Livingstone, and you said it was a different university than it was 5 years ago. Can you touch on the steps that you now can confidently say that is a different university than it was 5 years ago, whether the steps you took yesterday or, a couple years ago as that is?
Sure, Austin. I think it's been a long process for the university, and you can look on many, many different levels. There's been dramatic changes in personnel at the institution, whether that was in athletics or at other levels outside of the athletics program. You can look at dramatic changes in our policies at the university in regard to how we handle student conduct, how we handle Title IX cases. You can look at processes that we follow. And frankly, if you go back and look at the 105 recommendations that came out of the Pepper-Hamilton review, all of which have been implemented and verified multiple times over, you can see the dramatic changes that have taken place. And, to speak specifically to some of those changes as it relates to Title IX, we have one of the best staff Title IX offices, I would argue, in the country, certainly within the conference in this region. We have, I think, policies and processes that have been reviewed by some of the best experts in the country, and those have been audited to ensure that we're following them properly, to ensure that, one, we're doing everything we can to prevent sexual assault, that we're doing training and education of our students, including our student athletes, to help them understand the risks of this, how to prevent it on our campus. And then when incidences occur, which unfortunately they do on college campuses, as much as we wish we could prevent every single one of them, that we have proper training in place to help our staff know how to work with victims and do trauma-informed conversations, to look at how we investigate and adjudicate those, and then that we have the right processes in place and the fair processes in place to review those investigations and to make decisions about discipline. So all of those things, in addition to dramatic changes in personnel, have changed on this campus. And we continue to learn every day of how we can continue to make progress and improve on what has been done over the last 5 years.
Next question comes from Bryce Cherry with the Waco Tribune Herald.
Yeah, Mac, you mentioned that you guys got the report a short time ago. Can you speak to exactly when the panel shared their findings with you guys, and have you had a chance to confer with Coach Aranda about navigating some of the penalties that you guys will have to go through in terms of less recruiting visits and that kind of thing?
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. We received it this morning, probably about an hour and a half before it became public. I think it became public probably a little bit earlier than what it was supposed to. So we had a little bit of time to process and to review. And then, yes, I've had the opportunity to visit with Coach Aranda in person and talk through some of the penalties, obviously specifically the recruiting restrictions.
Next question comes from Kendall Kaut with Our Daily Bears.
This question I think could be for either one who could answer it, but I'll start with Linda. The report does not specify that athlete from 2011 that vacates the wins if that athlete played in 2010 or 2009. Do you know at this time if that will only apply to the 2011 season as far as vacating wins?
My understanding is it just applies to 2011. I know Mac and his staff looked at that fairly carefully to verify that. So Mac, you can add to that if there's anything to add.
Yes, at this time, again, just in our quick review, we believe it's just 2011, and it impacts five games, 5 wins that season.
Next question from Eric Kelderman with the Chronicle of Higher Education.
Hey, folks. Thanks for taking some time today. I guess I just want to ask, Mr. Rhodes, you said that you found the penalties as you reviewed them fair. I want to know, does that mean you're not going to appeal them to the NCAA? Secondly, if you could give me an update on the various Title IX investigations that are underway from the Department of Education, and when do you think any of those might be resolved, and what kinds of actions might be included in those resolution agreements?
Thank you for the question. I will certainly answer the first, but I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer the second question. So the first, as mentioned in my opening statement, our attorneys are still obviously in process of thoroughly reviewing the report. I think, at this point in time, it's probably unlikely we appeal. We have 15 days to make that decision. But right now, again, just after initial review, initial discussions with our attorneys, we think that will be unlikely.
And I'll take the second question. We do certainly still have cases open with the Office of Civil Rights as it relates to this time frame. And we continue to work with and cooperate with the Office of Civil Rights. We have really no sense of timing on those. Those can often take multiple years. This one has already taken multiple years. So we don't have a sense at this point in time when that will be brought to conclusion. We certainly hope it will happen sooner rather than later, but don't have a time frame.
Next question from Paula Levine with ESPN.
Sure. I know you both said that the findings seemed fair and that you're still spending some time going through everything, but the report gives a lot of extra detail to the text messages that came out in 2017 and the facts surrounding those, and also some perspective from the investigators on that material, and then also some of the sexual misconduct material. Is there anything in there that you have seen fact-wise, or their interpretation or their opinion, that you disagree with?
Paul, I certainly appreciate the question, and I think in general, and again, Chair Maturi may have even spoken to this, but I think in general we agree on all of the facts. We didn't spend a lot of time in disagreement. I think we also absolutely owned and understood we had moral failings, and we were pretty resilient, pretty direct in stating that, and making sure that everybody understood that those moral failings are unacceptable, and they can't happen again.
Next question from Shehan Jayarajah with Dave Campbell's Texas Football.
Hey, my question I think is primarily for Dr. Livingstone. So in the reports, in the argument, it seemed like a big part of the argument was that the things that applied to student athletes didn't just apply to student athletes, and that was a big part of the defense. So I will ask, on the student side of things, as somebody who was also there from 2012 to 2016, What does day-to-day accountability look like for that in terms of heading forward? And also, for students who are there now, why should they believe that kind of things have changed?
No, that's a very good question, Shahan. And I know for students that were here at that time, that was a very challenging time to be on our campus as we went through all of that and it became public. I would speak to accountability on a couple of levels. First, one of the real issues in this case was accountability for reporting of sexual assault incidences by employees of the university. This case was particularly related to those in the athletics department. And part of the reason the finding came down the way it did is because there was also not reporting in other places on campus of sexual assault, all of which was wrong and shouldn't have been the case, but our student athletes were not being treated differently than other students. And so our situation in that regard has changed dramatically in terms of accountability for our employees. In the state of Texas and at Baylor, even prior to the state requiring it, all employees of the university are required reporters of sexual assault and sexual harassment. And the state of Texas has a pretty strict law now making that an offense if you don't do that. So even prior to the state putting some of those regulations in place, Baylor had made everyone on campus a required reporter, which was not the case at the time. And we do extensive training with our faculty and staff to ensure that they know how to do it, and they know their responsibility and the accountability for that. With regard to students, again, we do significant amounts of training with our students across campus. Freshmen, as they come to campus, while they're on campus, students, even in their time here after their freshman year, are given training and education about Title IX. Certainly a significant part of it is how to prevent sexual assaults, how to be a support to your friends and to help protect each other in the process. We have a program called It's On Us that's really important in that regard. We make it very available on campus for people to know the multiple ways in which they can report sexual assault if it occurs. And we've even changed some of our guidelines. We've got amnesty procedures in place now that if you're violating some other student conduct principle on campus related to an assault, you will not be held accountable for that misconduct because we want you to report the assault. And then, as we've said before, we have much stronger accountability procedures in place, good investigative procedures, good hearing procedures, good methods for determining discipline in the case that someone's found responsible. So there's just so much more awareness on our campus now than there used to be, and frankly, much higher levels of responsibility and accountability than at the time these incidents happened.
Shahan, I'd also like to add that, all of those educational components that Dr. Livingstone referenced for our students, obviously that includes our student athletes. And then we do additional training with our student athletes, a very robust program we call Real Relationships. And we've continued to do that, and we'll continue to be resilient and improve and evaluate and make sure we do that for all of our student athletes.
Next question from Tommy Witherspoon with the Waco Tribune Herald. Tommy, you're still muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I've got two questions. One was an easy one, quick one for Mac. The Assistant Director of Football Operations, who is cited in the report, there's been conflicting reports about who that is. Can you tell us who that individual is?
Yeah, I can tell you that I can't tell you who it is, but I can tell you who it is not. It is not Colin Shillingworth.
Okay. Is it Odell James?
I can't confirm that, Tommy.
Okay. And my next question is for President Livingstone, I guess. You talked about praying and crying with some of the victims of sexual assault. What kind of message are you sending to the victims that are on these pending lawsuits as Baylor continues to fight in the courtroom? I know y'all are obviously being sued, but what kind of message do you think this is sending to those those ladies?
Well, I don't know that I could speak to how they're going to interpret the findings of the NCAA. I hope, though, that they will understand how much Baylor has learned from these past experiences, how much we regret what happened on our campus at that period of time, and how different we are now because of what we learned from that experience. I'm sorry it took us going through that to learn those lessons and to make those changes. And I regret the pain and hurt that it caused many along the way in that process. And we certainly want to continue to do everything we can to prevent these kinds of incidents going forward, because these are traumatic life experiences. They change someone's life forever. Our hearts go out to these victims and what they've experienced. And so we hope that folks understand we've learned from this. We have made lots of changes from it, and that we, feel deep empathy and care for the victims of sexual assault.
Thank you.
Next question from Darby Brown with KWTX TV in Waco.
Thank you. My question is for Mac. Have you had any conversations with any of the current student athletes about these findings? And if not, because I know it's been a short time, I guess, how will those conversations go?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Darby. As mentioned earlier, had an opportunity to visit with Coach Aranda, and then Coach Aranda and I had the opportunity to visit with the team, obviously in fall camp, so easier to do that. I would say that that's a private matter between the team and coach and myself. They were receptive. I do want to say I'm proud of them. They have been part of the culture change, each and every one of them, and not saying we're perfect, not saying they're perfect, but they have been instrumental in the culture change, the way they lead and the way they interact with one another, and certainly grateful to Matt Rule and to Coach Aranda.
Next question from Curtis Quillen with KCEN TV in Waco.
Dr. Livingstone, yesterday you were named to the NCAA's Constitutional Committee. And in this report, it states that the Committee on Infractions can only adjudicate based on rules in place from the NCAA at that time. Have you or any of your colleagues also named to this committee discussed whether or not anything of this matter would be discussed as you guys move forward with these constitutional changes?
Well, since the committee was just named yesterday and our findings just came out today, we've not actually had any meetings of that group, and certainly no discussions at all related to this particular case. But I will say the intent of that committee is to really think from the ground up how a governance of intercollegiate athletics should be structured at a national level going forward, to ensure that we do it the best way possible in the best interest of our student athletes. And so I think all of these things are on the table, and really everything as it relates to governance of intercollegiate athletics. And so certainly I think our case informs that, just as the Alston case that recently went to the Supreme Court informs it, just as the NIL issues inform it, just as some of the conference realignment issues inform it. So there are many factors that we take into consideration, but I have no doubt our case, among other cases that have gone through the infractions process, will be part of our discussions.
Next question from Eric Kelderman with the Chronicle of Higher Education.
Hey, folks, just one more. Thanks. Dr. Livingston, as you join this constitutional committee, I wonder, how can the NCAA and its member constituents erase this idea that, the rules are in place solely to protect the institutions from penalties in such instances? We've had a number of high-profile cases over the past, decade. We could all on this Zoom panel name all of those and discuss them in great detail. But in each case, the NCAA has, either handed out either no penalties, or in this case, things that may be seen as a slap on the wrist. So how can you erase that perception, I guess? And are you personally going to advocate for greater oversight by the NCAA in instances of sexual misconduct?
I think one of the things that we see, not just in intercollegiate athletics, but across higher education more broadly, is just the growing complexity of the issues that we face in higher education. And sexual assault is absolutely one of those. And we've had to adapt and change the way we deal with that across our campuses broadly, in addition to what we do in our athletics programs. And so I think what's happened then is governance of intercollegiate athletics has lagged behind what's happening in the world, whether that's with, name, image, and likeness and how you let students benefit from that, whether that's, as I said earlier, related to the Alston case or issues of sexual assault. There's probably a longer list than that of things that have changed pretty dramatically in recent years as it relates to athletics that we have to take into consideration. And I think at the end of the day, what you want to do is have your priority be taking care of your student athletes and creating a fair and competitive playing environments for student athletes, and frankly, one that makes academics a priority. They are student athletes, and we need to remember that as part of this process. And so, I think all of these things are on the table, and we've got to look very, very seriously at them, including how we should be thinking about sexual assault and the responsibility of the NCAA and governance organizations with regard to this issue.
We're almost out of time. Have time for one more question from Austin Walker with KXXV TV in Waco.
Hey, one more thing. I know you've already kind of touched on this, but back in 2010, USC had a 2-year bowl ban for a very similar infraction. So I kind of want to ask again, with that being said, do you think that Baylor got off easy?
Hey, Austin, yeah, and again, I appreciate the reference to USC. I'm not, respectfully, I'm not sure I agree with you in terms of similar cases. I think they were in many instances different. And I'll go back to what I've said, earlier. I think given, current NCAA legislation and what it governs, I think our outcome was fair.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll make a recording of this Zoom available. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.